Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this afternoon's panel, which is entitled Palestinians in Israel and the Future of the Jewish State. There is, of course, a contradiction in the Zionist project, because on the one hand, Israel is a Jewish state. On the other hand, there are a large number of Arab citizens in the state of Israel. And as time goes on, this contradiction actually deepens. When the state was created after the 48 war, 13% of the population of Israel was Arab. Today, 21% of the population of Israel is Arab. And in the view of many Zionists, this constitutes the demographic danger. The issue is now what will happen to Israel given this demographic trend. So what that means is the topic today, the Palestinians in Israel and the future of the Jewish state, is not simply an academic subject. It is a very serious political issue. And we're very fortunate to have with us to discuss this two very distinguished gentlemen whose credentials are exceptional. How this is going to work is each speaker will speak for 25 minutes, and then we'll allow 25 minutes for questions. The first speaker is Asad Ghanem.
Ghanem?
Okay, thank you.
Ghanem. I know that everybody's tired, so I'm trying.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm going to try it again. Ghanem.
That's okay. What? I'm here.
The best I can do.
I'm going to speak for 25 minutes. So.
Yeah. Okay. Professor Ghanem is a political scientist. He's the chair of government and political philosophy in the department in the School of Political Science at Haifa University. He is an activist and a leading a Palestinian intellectual, and he is a very prolific scholar. His last four books are The Palestinians and Arab Minority in Israel, 1948 to 2000, which he published in 2001. The Palestinian Regime, A Partial Democracy, 2002. Ethnic Politics in Israel, The Margins and the Ashkenazi Center, 2009, and Palestinian Politics After Arafat, A Failed National Movement in 2010. Professor Ghanem is has a position which is, as the contradiction inside of Israel deepens, the situation of the Palestinians worsens. He believes that the time for a two-state solution is long since passed, and the only solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict is one state. And he has attracted an international audience in his presentation of that view. So we will hear, I'm sure, more about that in a minute. Our other speaker, Shirley Dichter. I'll get there, don't worry. Is a I can pronounce your name. I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
It's not R.
This is a tough group here. He's an activist on behalf of real equality between Arabs and Jews. He has been, from 1998 to 2008, the co-executive director of an NGO called Sukai, and I learned that the other co-director, in fact, is our other speaker. In this organization, the name of it is the Association for the Advancement of Civic Equality for Promotion of Better Arab-Jewish Relations. And he is currently the executive director of Hand in Hand, the Center for Jewish Arab Education in Israel, and something of his mission in this organization, and his own values are expressed in a short mission statement, which says, "Our mission at Hand in Hand is to create a strong, inclusive, shared society in Israel through a network of Jewish, Arab, integrated bilingual schools and organized communities." Mr. Dechter has calls himself a Zionist, and he feels that he bears the guilt for what he considers the injustices of Zionism in the past, but he would like to reformulate Zionism so it offers a true equality. We'll begin, sir, with you. 25 minutes.
First, thank you, Alan. You pronounce it well. Usually, I pronounce it Ghanem, but that's okay. Ghanem is fine. I know that you are tired, so I'm trying to be. I'll start from the conclusion because I'm not sure that you will be here in a few minutes. So I think that what I want to raise up here in my lecture is to tell you that I think that we are facing a huge challenge in Israel that is related to three main developments. The first one is the specific concept of national security in Israel, and I will elaborate on it in a minute. And the second one that is already mentioned by Alan is the collapse of the two-state solution. It is gone. There is no room for two-state solution. It's an illusion. I know that many people still believe in it and they work on it, and there is a lot of industry around the concept of two-state solution, but it is over. And the third thing, the third component, is the rising power of Palestinians in Israel. Actually, this is something that I thought I'm going to mention it in the end. I'll tell it for you now. I thought for many years, like many other Palestinians and Israelis and people around the world, that we will be affected as Palestinians in Israel, that the relationship between Arabs and Jews in Israel will be affected by the solution of the external conflict, by the end of the occupation. We believed for many years that when the occupation will be ended, we'll be benefited from it, and we will have heaven in earth in Jerusalem. And I don't believe in this anymore. I think that we need to really consider the opposite way, is to think how we Palestinians in Israel, we can contribute to a new concept of Israeli state, and then we be the model for the solution of the external problem, the occupation, and the rest, refugees, the rest of the Palestinian problem. And I am aware that following the speech of Netanyahu, many Americans are afraid that he is going to be inaugurated as the next president if the Congress consider the change of the constitution. And I know that many Americans are afraid of this option, but don't be afraid. He's going to be for many years to stay for many years in Israel, and he's going to be the next prime minister in Israel. Fortunately or unfortunately, this is up to political views, but he's going to be the next prime minister in Israel. And I know that there are many explanations why. Actually, the real question following the next election that will be in next Tuesday in Israel is why, following all this corruption, the crisis in the relationship between the states and the United States and Israel, all these social, economic, etc. problems, Netanyahu is still be the favorite, the one that will be elected as a prime minister. It's strange. It is not like the logic that you have it here in the States. If economy is not good in the state, then usually you will change the president. This is not the case in Israel, because it is not economy, it's not basic problems, it is demography in Israel. What happened in Israel, there is a basic change that related to the basic foundation of the demographic compensation in Israel society. Especially Orientals and new immigrants from the Soviet Union and religious groups, they are growing in numbers. This is pessimistic picture for those who believe in peace and in liberalism and in democracy, but this is the reality. We have to face the reality. And why are the Orientals, despite all the problems that they are facing, there is a huge discussion in Israel, why these Orientals still go and vote for the right wing? It is because of their political views that were crystallized, were built in the 50s and the 60s. And part of the story is punishing those that are in the left, the Mapai party, the Labour Party. And the alternative is the right wing, is the Likud. So basically, Netanyahu is going to be re-elected as a reflection of the politics of identity in Israel. This is one. This election, and I know that many people are interested in elections, are very important for the Arab vote, for the Arab citizens, the Palestinian citizens in Israel. Why is that? I think that it is due to three main reasons. First one, this is the first time that we create our own joint list. I don't know if you hear in the media about it. So this is the first time that we will have one joint Arab list with one Jew. It is called the shared list, but it is actually an Arab list, the joint list. No, shared is the promotion of the joint. And secondly, because I believed, just before a month, public surveys in Israel showed that Lieberman is going to gain 15 seats. And he's the most anti-Arab political figure in Israel, not in Israel, but among those who are active in politics, powerful in politics. And actually the hope came from Lieberman, that Lieberman will join the left-center government following election because he have his own desires and beliefs. Now Lieberman will get maybe 4 or 5 seats following the corruption affairs. So this is part of the explanation why we are going to see Netanyahu again as prime minister, and you are going to see him again in the Congress. And third, I don't know if you remember why the last government collapsed before 3 months. It's due to many reasons, but one reason is related to the discussion about the national law, the Jewish national law. You remember this when Tzipi Livni came out and she said, I'm not going to join efforts to have this new law. This is a discussion, this law, and disagreements between her and Netanyahu and Lapid is related, this law, the Jewish homeland law, is related to the status of Arabs in Israel. So these elections, partially, is about the status of Arabs in Israel, which is also, it takes a major part of the discussion about that related to this joint list that Arabs created, the Arab parties created. And one thing that I think that it was missing in this conference is that we related to this Middle East concept as exceptional case. It is not exceptional. We are part of the world. This identity problem is all over the world, in Europe, in Africa, and so we have to. I think that one of the failures why usually scholars they don't understand probably the Middle East, that because they think that it is exceptional case, and they came with all these strange ideas that Arabs don't fit democracy, Islam is in contradiction with democracy, etc. All these stories. I think that it is very important to mention that these cases that we discussed all over the day are not unique to the Middle East. And the question of national security in Israel and the Arab minority is related to two basic facts. The first one is the fact that Arabs in Israel are part of the Palestinian people, and they are part of the overall conflict between Israel and the Arab world. And this is related to the question of national security, of course. And the second thing is related to the question of divided societies and minorities in divided societies. for Israelis, for the Israeli public and the Israeli elites, Arabs Israel are a threat. And I will elaborate in a minute why they are considered as a threat to the national security. But this is not unique. This is the relationship in the minority and its relationship with internal and external problem. It's not unique to the Palestinian problem. It is also in Canada, in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Armenia, all over the world, Turkey, of course, etc., etc. So there is nothing unique, but I will try to. Generally, states can choose between two different general approaches. One, to incorporate the minority, to develop democracy, and to ask the minority representatives to be part of the state and society life. This is what happened usually in democracies. What so-called democracies? Liberal or constitutional democracy. I'm not going to elaborate on that. And the second approach is the one that built on exclusion and control of the minority. And there is a lot of material about these two general approaches. Actually, there are more than two general, but I'm trying to make it simple. Israel, because of external and internal problems, chose to use the second technique, is to use certain discriminatory policies, exclusion, and control over Palestinians and Israel. This is because internal and external concerns. What is the basic foundations, basic principles, basic components of Israeli national security? I claim that Israel have an extended meaning of national security. If you ask the Americans what is national security, they tell you it is to preserve the existence. I mean, you will learn that Netanyahu tried to teach the Americans what is national security. And to preserve the existence, that's obvious, clear. And the second thing is to preserve the territorial integrity of the state. And that's also clear. The third one is to preserve in America the democratic values or the democratic nature of the state. In Israel, it is by no means. The democracy is not mentioned in basic laws in Israel. The basic components, additional components of national security is preserving the Jewishness of the state. Third, it is part of the national security in Israel. I mean, it is a fact. I'm not saying that is good or positive or negative, but it's a fact. If you ask 99% of the Jews, they want Israel as a Jewish state, not as a natural, normal state. And if you ask, of course, the Israeli elites, this is what they want. And the fourth element of Israel national security is protecting the Jews in the world in dangerous situations. You know this. So this is a very unique and extended meaning of national security. What happened lately, that following the, let's say, the collapse of, I mean, I think that Oslo collapsed in 2000. I mean, when Sharon declared war against Arafat, it is over. I know that Palestinians and Arabs and Israeli left still believe that it existed because this is the only game that they can play with it. I mean, they want something. And Mahmoud Abbas cannot say that there is no Oslo. Then they will ask him, the Palestinians ask him, so what to do now? And he doesn't have an answer. Actually, there are many evidence that show that the concept, the extended concept of the additional concepts, components of the national security concerns, shows that there are many new evidence. Let's say, I mean, if you remember, I mean, first raising the question of the state as Israel as a Jewish state as part of the negotiation. It is something new that was raised by Sharon first, and then it became as the main thing for Netanyahu, is that he declares every day that this is what he expects from the Palestinians. The second thing, if you remember why Israel withdrew from Gaza, it's because of Jewish state considerations, not security issues, not because Israel cannot defeat the Palestinians, but because Israel Sharon declared then that the main aim why he's going to withdraw from Gaza is to have less Palestinians, less Arabs under Israeli control. Of course, if you follow Israeli Knesset, there are a new wave of laws that stresses the Jewishness of the state. Actually, in 98, there was more or less 18 laws. Now we have more than 40 laws that, in a way or another, stresses the Jewishness of the state. And of the discriminatory policy in Israel, it is well known, it is official, of course, and everybody knows about it. And the last thing that we need to reconsider is the legitimacy that is granted for the extreme right in Israel. In the next election, the representative of Kach, you remember Kach? The Kahana? And he was, they didn't allow him in 84, I think, to run for Knesset. His representative is going to run for this election. So this is a wave. It's not only him, but at least he's the most extreme one. This is kind of legitimacy that are granted to the Israeli right wing. So there are certain components, and I think that, okay, I will make it brief. There are certain components in the existence of Palestinians in Israel that really can be considered as a threat to this specific concept of national security in Israel. Arabs in Israel are Palestinians. They have Palestinian Islamic identity. They are part of the Palestinian people, and actually they hold the same concepts like other Palestinians about the solution of the conflict. So they support the return of the refugees, they support the partition of Jerusalem, they support that Israel should withdraw until 67 borders. So they hold the same views like Fatah, like PLO, the majority of Palestinians in Israel. And they oppose the Jewish consensus concerning Jewishness, Zionism, the relationship with the United States, etc. So of course, as I said before, there is a discrimination, and they try to resist the discrimination. They have a high demographic weight. It is also a relative thing, but they are 20%. It is high percent of Arabs in Israel, and they declare their own demands, their own wishes. They want to change Israel to be a more binational state. They don't accept the Israeli concept of what is national security. So they agree to accept Israel as a state, as a political unit, but they do not agree. They refuse to accept to consent with the concept of the Jewish state. Why is that? Many people, I think that there is a misunderstanding why Palestinians in Israel, and of course many others in the Arab world, they refuse to agree to accept Israel as a Jewish state. I think that there is 7 meanings of what is a Jewish state for Arabs in Israel. One, it is demography. I mean, Jewish state means Jewish majority in Israel. Of course, this is clear. Secondly, it is a state for the Jews, citizens and not citizens, rather than its Arab citizens. It's by law. So it is declared that this is the state of the Jews, not only in Israel, but those are in Europe. Third, it is an obligation to Jewish samples, as you know. It is clear. I'm trying to make it short. Fourth, priority in implementing state policies. I mean, the state declares that it's aimed to make Judaization of the Naqab, of the Galilee. So it is clear that it is part of the state. The priority and implementation policies is part of the Jewishness of the state. Fifth, the informal system and institution that cares only to the interest of the Jews, like Keren Kayemet. I don't know if you follow I mean, part of the land that were taken from the Arabs by the state power that was transferred to Keren Kayemet, which is not Israeli, which is a Jewish institution. And now Arabs cannot live in the same territory. They cannot have piece of land to live there. This was taken from the other in Carmel, let's say, in the Galilee, by Israeli laws, and that one transferred to the Jewish agency and the Keren Kayemet, and then Arabs cannot live in this land that were taken from them. It is, of course, the sixth or the seventh element it is ethnocracy. It is half democracy for Arabs. It is not democracy for the Arabs. There is no half democracy, as you know. So it is the state that gives preference to, in all fields of life, to the Jewish citizens and less for the Arab. Actually, it is not the discrimination that I think that bring me to claim that Israel as an ethnocracy and not democracy. It's not only the discrimination, because discrimination is found all over the world towards minorities, including women. But it is the fact that this discrimination in partial is by law. So by Israeli law, there are certain laws, and the famous book is by David Kretschmer. He wrote it in 90. He didn't know about the new wave, but he might have a new edition of his book following the last wave of laws in the. So this is these are the basic facts. What I'm back to the conclusion. I think that basically we believed, as many others believed, that we are going to have some kind of solution based on the two-state solution. And now, following the collapse of Oslo, the demographic change in Israel, the political reality in Israel and in the West Bank, it's not only that Israel is the Palestinians have a share in this reality, in the basic reality, complicated reality. So we are far now than 93 from the concept of two-state solution. Far away. I mean, and this is why I claim that we are this two-state solution almost collapsed. The other side of the story is that I believe that more and more Arabs in Israel, they take their citizenship as a serious matter, more than in the 50s and the 60s. And they are trying to change the Israeli meaning of being a citizen and the meaning of being Israeli state. And many of my colleagues think that this is a lost case. There is no chance that we will be able to change the state of Israel. I don't agree with them. If we take a look into divided societies, and back to the theoretical and the comparative level, if we think about South Africa, Canada, North Ireland, there is a hope. I mean, that we are 20%. We might have the power to have some kind of alliance with the part of the Israeli left. And this also means that Arabs and the Israeli left have to develop a new concept of what is a shared citizenship. And this is, I leave to Shuli Dichter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assad. In fact, I'm not sure what would be appropriate to open with. As Ed said, I'm suggesting a new form of Zionism. I call it Civic Zionism, which differs from military Zionism or land-based Zionism. But this, in one short line, I would say that this new Zionism, this new form of Zionism that Jews in Israel should adopt, in my opinion, must include the sheer wisdom of diaspora. Jewish diaspora has developed very special relations of Jews between Jews and non-Jews. There are certain institutions, important institutions in diaspora, in Jewish diaspora, that are taking care of this. There's in every single Jewish community in the diaspora in America, there's a committee, special committee that is called JCRC, the Jewish Committee for Community Relations. This community, this community is taking care of relations between the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community around it. There's JCRC in Houston. Anybody here from Houston? I believe in every Jewish community there is. Just imagine, Assad, that in Israel, in every Jewish community, there will be a special committee that takes care of the relations between that community and its non-Jewish neighbors. Then life in Israel will look different, but here I will suggest another way to look different at life in Israel. This is this option I'm suggesting in a book I published 2 months ago, and it's in Hebrew only yet, but it will be translated to English, I believe, and to Arabic for sure. This can work. Oh, it's working. What about the monitor? It can work. It can work here too. Thank you. Is it this? Yes, it's the PowerPoint. All right, excellent, thank you very much. Academics, researchers like Assad and the rest of the speakers here today are locating the problems that we are suffering from, and they are learning them and share with us the wisdom. And I'm very grateful. I'm the only non-academic here today. I'm coming from the field of civil society. So civil society activists and politicians should take care of fixing the problems. We do recognize that the major challenge of the 21st century, I think it was in the 20th century as well, but we look forward, is creating an inclusive society that can really bear the differences and the different identities and communities. This is in divided societies, and Israel ultimately is a divided society. Put it this way, in Israel, the two tectonic plates under the reality in the state of Israel are Jewish and Palestinian, 80-20% roughly. I don't have to explain this, who are the who. In each and every one, in each side, there is different divides as well. And there are also divides that are crossing the line between the two of them, like the rich and the poor, and the periphery and the city, and whatever. But the basic two makes of Israeli citizenry are Jews and Palestinians. And this is the basic divide in the state of Israel. Hand in hand, the organization that I'm heading now comes to suggest two formations to overcome this divide, or at least to create shared arenas for shared living, for equal shared living. This is Hand in Hand. Hand in Hand is an organization that offers bilingual education in official public schools. We partner with the government to create in public schools bilingual education. We have to partner with government, so we have to bring our own funding into it as well, from parents and from philanthropy, mainly from philanthropy. This is more like the charter schools here But in Israel, it's subjected to the supervision of Ministry of Education and so on and so forth. In general, in Israel, I must say this in the United States, the school education is separated between Jews and Arabs. The Jewish education is conducted in Hebrew, and the Arab education is conducted in Arabic. It's different, and it's separate, okay? Hand in hand suggests joint schools, shared, integrated schools that are integrating both. The teaching in the classroom is in 2 languages. 2 teachers are coming into the class. This is why it costs so much. 2 teachers are in each class, and they are teaching in both languages. They do not translate each other. We do not teach the children to be polite and wait for the translation. The children have to understand when they start a sentence and completing it in the 2 different languages. Now, this is done, must be done in a harmonious way in between 2 teachers. Therefore, the 2 teachers must live professionally on equal basis, everything, okay? They have to practice equal teaching all the time. That means that their own intention, their own psychic must be on equal basis as a Jew and an Arab, okay? This is not easy in a divided society to bring both sides to act like this and to expect them also to teach harmoniously. Yes, teachers do differ sometimes. They have differences between them, not in front of the kids, of course. But we know that this is not automatic. We work on this all the time in training the teachers, in helping them develop this professional skill of co-teaching. We call it co-teaching, of course, here too. The calendar in the school. The calendar in the school is shared. Can you imagine that? In Israel, Jews and Arabs go for holidays on different times. This even reduces the chances to meet with each other. Hand-in-hand schools are combining them, and hand-in-hand kids are going out for holidays on different times than other schools, of course. So that means that a Jewish kid would enjoy Pesach, Passover holiday would be shorter in order to make room for a longer time for the Arab kids, and vice versa, okay? Assad's 3 children went to a bilingual school in the Galilee, and sometimes when you were at work, your children were on holiday because it was a Jewish holiday in your Arab town, which is rather inconvenient. But the parents are not just sending their kids to school. This is not enough. We wouldn't want to load the work of creating shared society on the shoulders of the children. This is unethical also. We shouldn't expect them to solve our problems. Therefore, in the past 3-4 years, we've started in hand to initiate institutionalization of the community activities that are there in every school. There is community activities for the parents, but this time around, it's much more institutionalized, organized, and we are creating community institutions around the schools. The community institutions, for example, would be, of course, committees, different committees for everything, like in every community. It would be leisure, like the sports, joint running group for women. I think things that are happening. A joint basketball team in Jerusalem. They are playing in the municipal league already 3 years, and they are winning and winning. Or not only leisure, but also civic action, which is not easy to do. Fighting against road number 4 that is cutting Beit Safafa, the neighboring Palestinian village next to our Jerusalem school, or intervening in a establishing shared industrial park in Wadi Ara, where we have a school. These kind of activities that are coming out from the community of Hand in Hand are starting now in the past couple of years and are developing. The last summer has put us to a test. The last summer in Israel started with the kidnapping of 4 children. 3 Jews and 1 Palestinian. 4. It were 4 of them. And we count them together, usually. Also, unfortunately, the dead also.
At least I counted 100 Palestinians that were kidnapped, but I didn't mention that.
Okay. Also, the tragedies going hand in hand in Israel. And it started very, very sadly this summer. And it unleashed an ugly wave of racism inside the state of Israel against Palestinian citizens. It went so hard that some Palestinian members of our communities wouldn't go to the mall to shop because they were harassed there. This was dealt in our communities in a series of dialogue sessions, the way we do it always. And out of the dialogue sessions in the end of June or the beginning of July, our members of the communities decided that they're going out and expressing a solid message. We stand together and we will continue to create this alternative of shared living in Israel despite all this hatred that is outside. They started to walk on the railway promenade in Jerusalem. It's here on the. They went out in Wadi Ara to the street, to the main road, standing every Friday afternoon, standing together as they declared themselves neighbors of peace. The slogans were different in each community. In Jaffa as well. They went outside every week in Jerusalem. They went twice a week. It's a big community. Hundreds and hundreds of people joined them everywhere in different locations where we are. In Jerusalem, in Wadi Ara, in the Galilee, in Haifa, in Jaffa. In Beersheba, there is a bilingual school that is not with Hand in Hand, but they deserve mention as well. And in Neve Shalom, there are 2 schools that are not with us. Everywhere, the communities went outside to demonstrate their decision to live together. Now, this is one test that the community went through and succeeded. The concept of shared community around the schools. But the grade 10 student in Jerusalem told me a couple of months ago that this summer never ended. Because the objection to what we do in the state of Israel is not only by speech, but also arson attack. We were attacked by arsonists in the end of November, on November 29th, to be accurate. Arson attack on a bilingual school in Israel was only a continuation of continuous attacks, mainly graffiti attacks and harassment on the bus in Jerusalem to on our students. But even before the arson attack, we witnessed an awakening in the Israeli establishment, in the government, recognizing us, even before the arson attack. They started to come and visit. Professor Trachtenberg, the head of higher education, he was at the time, and Minister of Justice and so on. They came to visit our school and to recognize this difference even before the arson attack. But after the arson attack, I'm not saying yet that this has changed the game. It didn't yet. We have a long way to go. But the arson attack has brought us and the very existence of viable alternative on the civil society level to the attention of the entire public in Israel. Everybody who is exposed to TV and radio and papers know the term duleshoni. Duleshoni is bilingual. It's the bilingual education, the bilingual school in Israel. Everybody knows. It went far, far. And well, of course, we had this support from everywhere, outpouring support to the schools and to what we do. But to us, frankly, this is only the beginning. Because we know that it is not the state that wants us to grow. Still not. The state did not initiate hand in hand. The state does not support hand in hand in particular. We have the support for the schools the way every other school is getting. And we have the attention now more than before. And we think that government wouldn't let us die. But still, hand in hand, as a civil society organization, as an outside of the establishment, outside of the government initiative must do this, it is still coming bottom up. I know that in America it looks like, duh, so, okay, civil society is doing everything. In Israel, not. Israel is more the European type that expects the government to do what's good for society and not the society to do it itself. Still, we couldn't wait. Assad, as a father, couldn't wait. How many years ago? 15 years ago, almost. How long? How old is your oldest? 17. Now it was almost. It was 13, 12 years ago that you started. We cannot wait, but we know that we have a long way to go, both vis-a-vis the Israeli government as well as vis-a-vis the public. But here you can see the public coming to support us on the Friday after the attack. We invited everyone to come. Thousands and thousands came marching together via the railway promenade, coming here this way, going up to the school to show solidarity with us and with the grade 1 that was burned. The Pope came before the arson attack. He didn't come because of the arson attack, but he also visited us. In the future, in the near future, actually this year we're opening another one in Kfar Saba and Tira in mid-Israel. In the future, we want to see us as 15, 20 schools at least, with shared communities around the schools, all over Israel. But the most important thing is to elevate the local experience to the national level. This would make us a viable movement for shared society and real shared citizenship, where citizens own their own community on an equal base between Jews and Palestinians. There's a long way to go, and even when we achieve our goal, and we will achieve it within a decade, I believe, this is still will not be the state that you want. Still, the state will not be shared in a way that we want it to be shared on a completely, total, equal basis. Maybe the way it's mentioned in the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel. Oh yes, and of course, the president, your president, invited us to light a menorah in the White House, and the candles were dedicated to society, education, freedom, human dignity, peace, equality, reconciliation, and friendship. This is what's written there on the candles. So, Israel, like the rest of the Middle East and probably the rest of the world, I do agree with you, is based on politics of identities. Also, society bottom up is based on this. And as you said, Assad, you said earlier that it's not the economy, right? You said in Israel it's not the economy. That's true. Maybe in America, it's the story is that it's the economy. But where we live, this is a cartoon by Najil Ali. It says, it shows here a Palestinian refugee in Lebanon sitting on a barrel, probably that brought him from Haifa or Akka, or maybe it's an oil barrel, I don't know. Now, this was yes, maybe from Syria. And the Lebanese intellectual is asking him, actually, what you are? You are a Muslim, or a Christian, Sunni, or Shia, Durzi, or Alawi, Qubti, or Maroni, or and so on and so forth. And he says to him, Ana Arabi ya Jahsh. I'm an Arab, you donkey. Donkey, in Hebrew and Arabic, it's stupid. Okay? This is my suggestion.
The floor is open for questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for interesting and optimistic interventions. I'm a retired diplomat from the country that brokered the Oslo Accord. And I must agree with you that the Oslo Accord and the two-state solution is dead. But I would like to note that Israel-Palestine is in the region of resurrection. And I don't believe in miracles normally, but in this case, I really hope that you can restart a process for the two-state solution. Because I believe that if you go for a one-state solution like you ascribed with demographics, which will give you a stronger hand, I think with the experience we have, that could become very ugly. I think I remember Ariel Sharon once indicating, talking about the two-state solution. Yeah, two-state solutions, the Palestinians already have Jordan. You don't know what comes out if you start going down the track for a one-state solution. And I would say, just to say this, I don't blame Israelis or Palestinians for the stalemate, because after 40 years in diplomacy, my feeling is that from 1947 through Camp David, Madrid, Oslo, etc., there never was a really strong and broad support for a two-state solution, neither in Israel or nor amongst the Palestinians. And this is the main problem, that neither party really wants it, and there are always rejectionists. I remember after the Oslo Accord, Farouk Kaddoumi, who was then the foreign minister of PLO, told us very strongly that the Oslo Accord was the biggest treason against the Palestinian cause since 1947. They won in 1947. A couple of years later, Isaac Rabin was shot by his right wing. But you really have to sit down and get together and try to make the two-state solution. I applaud very much the hand in hand. It's optimistic, but at the back of my head, I look at Iraq today, where there was not much schisma between Shia and Sunni, and suddenly it erupts, and they are not hand in hand any longer. So my recommendation is try to go back and broker a two-state solution. Thank you.
I mean, basically, I'm aware of the numbers and statistics among Palestinians and among Israelis that support the two-state solution. I want just one clarification. When Israeli Jews speak about two-state solution, they think and they imagine something totally different than what Palestinians think. There is no agreement about the two-state solution. This is something that, as academic, we would like to see, and many academics show that Palestinians and Israelis support the two-state solution. They support two different things. Secondly, I think we really need to think about the international experience. If I think about the last experience of divided societies, let's say in the last half a century, started with the Canadian case, moving to the Macedonian case, the Iraqi case, now the last referendum in Britain. Groups choose to stay together, not to divide the society, the state. And that's a fact. I mean, I know that. And when I speak about the one-state solution, people usually mention the bad experience in Belgium. What is wrong with Belgium? I mean, I would like to see Belgium in Palestine with all the problems. So I think that, I mean, this pessimism about the one-state solution, maybe you are trying to analyze the past and to make conclusion for the future. This is one way to look. But why not to think about Palestinians and Jews in the Galilee, where I am living? It's a total binational situation, not a binational state, but reality in the field. Jews and Arabs, they go to the same school, joint school that Shuli is directing, and we have what I call shared enclaves, economic, social, entertainment, etc. So we live together. Why not to think about our experience? Why you want to just, why people just want to think about the negative experience of Jews? And so there is no end for this conflict if we continue to think about. I hope, I'm not sure that will happen. I'm not saying that we are going to a one-state solution. This is my solution. I want one-state solution. But I'm not sure that the alternative to the one democratic state is open conflict forever. Think about this in this way, and then you might change your mind and say, okay, let's go for the one-state solution. This is better. But I'm sure that it is more than that. If you want to solve, I mean, I wrote an article before 2 years, I don't know, in Haaretz, under the title, Thank You, Netanyahu. When he raised up the question of, he demanded that PLO should agree to accept Israel as a Jewish state, I wrote an article, I said, this is what we are waiting for. Netanyahu united us as Palestinians, because Abu Mazen will not agree, Hamas will not agree, we, Palestinians and Israel, will not agree to accept Israel as a Jewish state, so he's uniting us. This is true. The second thing, I thought that to rewrite this article and to say thank you, Netanyahu, because what he's saying in his speeches about the conflict, he says clearly that this conflict begins, and the roots of the conflict in 48, not in 67. Not the question of the occupation. This is the question of the refugees. This is the question of Palestine and Israel. Call it whatever. So what is the solution that can deal handle this conflict, these problems that were created in 48. It is only the one-state solution. There is no other way to do it. Either one state, either open conflict. Choose what you want. Thank you.
I will just shortly relate to this. Civil society in the meantime, until they'll decide which state it will be, hand in hand, and other formations in Israel and everywhere else in the world. But in Israel, the formation, the educational and formal education and community formations, which are shared, are good for any solution, whether it will be a two-state solution, whether it will be one-state solution, whether it will be even a Jewish state or halachic state or Islamic state. God forbid both. But equal relations and equal status on the community basis between Jewish and Palestinian citizens is a must between the sea and the river, no matter what.
Yes.
First of all, kudos both to you, Dr. Ganem, and Shuli for this sharing this extraordinary experience and filling us with amazing pride, knowing that Israelis, all Israelis, Jewish Israelis, Palestinian Israelis, are working towards creating a wonderful society. I have to share with you that I'm stunned by this world obsession with the tiniest little country in the world, the only Jewish state, with all its warts and blemishes. We're not trying to fix 53 or 56 Muslim states that don't allow Palestine.
You are American or Israeli? You are American or Israeli?
I'm American.
I see. So you're speaking about in Israel?
So I'm talking about this obsession with fixing Israel, where the only Jewish state. Why not fix all the inequities of all the Muslim states where women are killed, beheaded, etc.?
Why not?
I wanted to just make sure we don't. But I wanted to make sure that people who don't know Israel very well didn't take your words literally, that the Palestinians are completely secluded. Would you please tell us if they serve in the Israeli parliament, if they had universities, if they teach, if they're heading medical clinics, if they are valedictorians at Technion or Beersheba?
Because they're second-class citizens as well.
But if would you please
okay.
let us know if they can participate in all the activities?
No. Of course, they are part of Israel and they are Israeli citizens. And for me, I don't have any other state. Like there is, you said. I mean, I'm always faced with this in Israel. They say this is the only state, our state. I said this is also my state. This is my this is my only state.
Absolutely.
So I'm fighting for having a democratic, egalitarian. And if you, I mean, I will face a hard time if Israel was based on equality and democracy and egalitarianism and without discrimination, and so this will make my claims much more difficult. This is the facts in Israel, and I'm not saying that there is no achievement for Arabs in Israel. I said I'm saying more than this. I'm saying that the only hope for the conflict, this is my point, the only hope for the future of the conflict, for the solution of the conflict, is if Arabs in Israel and Israelis left can create a different coalition in Israel. And this is the only hope. I mean, I know it is, from my point of view, I'm not Israeli patriot, but this is the only hope for Israel from point of view. Either having this extreme right, controlling everything, and having all this continuous discrimination in all fields. If you have, I gave a testimony in this Or Commission in the High Court in Israel, and I was asked by I said what I am saying here. That it was much 2 hours talk, and I elaborated in discrimination, all fields of life, etc., etc. And then one of them asked me, "This is very extreme. What are you saying?" I said, "Can you give me one example of equality in Israel?" One. There is one. There are two, actually. But this is out of hundreds and thousands of examples of discrimination. So it is too much to ask to fix this. It is, what is this? It is in contradiction with democracy, with Western, belonging to Western world, to democratic, egalitarian. What is, I would like to see the Arab world. For many years, I'm saying it is not now, for 20 years, more than 20 years, I'm saying that Iraq, let's say, take for example, either it will be binational state or it should give the, independence for the Kurds. I mean, it is not normal to have such a kind of ethnicity, ethnic states. But the problem is not only that Israel is a Jewish state, it's the implementation of the Jewish state. Think about the idea that in my university, I'm recorded, no? In my university, do you know what is the percent of the Arab students? 36%. Do you know 36% of Arab students? Do you know what's the percent of Arabs that work in the administration? 0.9. Do you believe in this? Yes, of the university.
Oh, okay.
My university. In the government, 2%, 3%. That's okay. 4%. What is this? This is democracy? I didn't give a lecture about Israel ethnocracy here. The situation is very sad, and I know all the stories why I'm fighting for more egalitarian citizenship in Israel, because I think that it is the benefits for Jews and Arabs. And if you want me to give a lecture, I'll give you a whole lecture about different things, about discrimination, about it is unbelievable stories about the situation in Israel, that people, when I came before 10 years speaking about Israel's system of discrimination, I was lecturing with Shuli, and people came to me and said, no, we don't believe, this is not Israel. I said, this is Israel. This is the facts in Israel. You have to face it. And when I'm saying that the only hope is to have egalitarian democratic state, because I belong to this state, I want to belong to this state, I don't want to destroy it. I want to be part of this successful, as you, story. But this is one condition. If Israel behaves to me as an equal human being, citizenship, rather than second, third, fourth states of non-citizenship. Thank you.
Mr. Dichter.
I just want to say shortly that this is in the best interest of the state of Israel. This is in the best interest of me as a Zionist. It's in the best interest of me as a Jew, and I think of the Jewish people in general. Equal rights between Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel is basic. We did not reach that yet, but we should be on the way, and I should thank people like Assad who do not give up.
Yeah.
Is it time for Israel to look at the definition of Zionism, the old definition versus a new definition? Does Israel stand the probability of losing the high moral ground in the world debate unless they change their thinking?
Yes, the world debate should have an influence, but my personal my suggestion derives from internal motives more, and mainly from the experience that we have gained in Israel in the field of partnerships between Jewish and Palestinian citizens. My suggestion to the transformation in the notion of Zionism from separatist Zionism to as an outgoing one, I call it Civic Zionism, derives from the very experience that comes. It's a whole process, but I hope it will translate it.
Just a comment, I enjoyed the conversation, but on the American side of the issue, on how American attitudes are changing on the two-state solution, one-state solution, there's been very, very profound change in just 1 year. In a poll I conducted a year ago, 39% of the American public said they support a two-state solution, 24% said they support a one-state solution, and the rest said continuation of the status quo, annexation without equal citizenship. This year, a poll I released just a couple of months ago, I still had 39% say two states, but we have the number of people who support one state reached 34%, which is almost equivalent to support two states, but that's outright. And then when you ask if there is no two-state, if two-state is no longer possible, what would you then support? We have 2/3 of those who say two states support one state. Now, when we say, in the absence of two state, if you're forced to choose between Israel as a Jewish state, but without full equal citizenship for Palestinians, versus Israel as a democratic state that loses its Jewish character, what would you choose? We had over 70% of the American public across party line, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, say they would choose democracy over Jewishness. And that includes 60% of Jewish Americans.
Wow.
On the other side, Professor Ghanem just said that there's nothing wrong with Jewish, as long as the implementation of equal citizenship works. Now, it does not. This is not a hechsher for a Jewish definition of the state. I do understand this, but the British flag of the Queen that is elected by God, does this make any difference to the ordinary citizen in the United Kingdom? No. If they live in equality, they live in peace with each other, then never mind. The flag is crossed, but Muslims and Jews can live under it. If the praxis of the state is a praxis that one can live with it.
Yeah.
These very interesting ideas, but I assume you're talking more about, let's say, Western Israel. But how does all this play out in the West Bank, where the problems of discrimination or inability to live for the Palestinians to live their lives without all kinds of controls and ability to go about their life, those situations must be entirely different. And how do these ideas play out when you're dealing with the West Bank, which has always been the main issue that we've dealt with here? The American people have sort of understood the fact that unfortunately the Arab Israelis don't have a very good life, but compared to the situation of the people that live in the West Bank, it must be entirely different. So how does that all play out in this whole idea that you have?
One of the major challenges that I start to think about this idea of one-state solution as just an outcome of comparing possibilities. But when I came to this conclusion that there is settlements, there is no political will on the two sides, then I start thinking about this, and now I believe it. Actually, I believe it in politically. I think that should be done. This is the way forward. One of the major challenges that facing us that support this one-state solution is Palestinian elites and Palestinian public. That's true. Palestinian public and Israeli public, it is divided. But at least the Palestinian public, they still believe in the two-state solution. But when this started to be the consensus among Palestinians in the 70s, when PLO said clearly that we are for the two-state solution, then few Israelis start to consider this, and the world start to consider it, until Bush declared that he's for two-state solution. George Bush. Sorry? Okay. So it is, what I'm trying to
Deadline.
tell you is that it is man-made. You can do it differently. If Palestinian elites say, okay, we are giving up, two-state solution is not, I mean, if we speak with with Palestinian elites, face-to-face, one-to-one, the majority, 90% of the elites will say this two-state solution is not working anymore. But when they go to the public, they still want to convene with the international agenda and the US official agenda and etc., etc. So it is the major challenge how to move ahead is to that Palestinians, those under control, are dominated, they should come with this idea. This is not going to come from the Jewish side because they are privileged, quote unquote. I mean, the Jews in Israel, the majority of them. So if Palestinians will come with the idea and they believe it and think that it is possible, then to convince the world that's the way forward is one-state solution. I don't believe international intervention. I think that it's not realistic. Neither two-state or one-state. It is not realistic. In this, I mean, in the near future, I don't know what will happen in 50 years or 20 years. I don't know. The second, I have another comment. I think that if you follow this election in Israel, what is the name of the alternative to Netanyahu? This is the Zionist camp. Why the Zionist camp? In Israel, we have this the status quo in Jewish, the status of the relationship between Jews and seculars, the status of Judaism in the public sphere, and we call it the status quo that was established by Ben Gurion and his agreement with the religious parties when Israel was established. There is another status quo that was established by Ben Gurion. This is the meaning of Jewish state. So this is Ben Gurion idea. Now, what is Netanyahu is trying to do is to develop a new concept of what is the meaning of Jewish state. So Tzipi Livni and Herzog, they came, we say, we are Ben Gurions. We are the ones, we are the Zionist camp. Netanyahu is the extreme or the ultra-extreme right wing. He's trying to have a new concept of Jewish state. My problem, as a Palestinian, we have our own concept as Palestinians. We reject, the majority of Palestinians in Israel, we reject this concept of Jewish state. We want egalitarian state. I didn't say that I'm accepting the Jewish state. I said the problem was the implementation, but of course, I want egalitarian state. But we have our problem that our partners in the Jewish left, they don't have this in their agenda. They still speak about the occupation as if this is something that we can solve. This is an illusion. I went to a meeting of the Zionist left before 6 months, before they declare election in Israel, in Neve Shalom, and there was all the leadership. I said, this is an illusion. You want me to deal with illusion? If you want really to speak about the future, let's speak about the status of Arabs in Israel. If we agree what is the meaning of the Jewish state, then we can offer alternative to Israel society. And this is why I believe this is possible in Israel to have alternative political situation. I believe if, I know that many people don't agree with me, that if Herzog, not now, before a month, declared that he's going to consider Arabs as part of his coalition, then more Jews and more Arabs will go out in the day of the election, and there is an alternative in Israel. Our problem, there is no leadership in Israel left. So this is why Netanyahu, beside the demographic situation that I mentioned in the early. Thank you.
One last question.
So, with Mr. Lieberman, the foreign minister of Israel, recently said that there was a statement, it was all over the news about how anybody who's anti-Israel, an Arab, he'll be beheaded or she'll be beheaded. What do you think about that? And then, in this current circumstance, and with your one-state policy?
I didn't hear it.
נתניהו שאמר שהוא יעניש את הערבים שלא יהיו נאמנים וזה וזה. חלק מהפרופגנדה, מה שאמרת קודם.
I
Okay.
didn't quite hear your question, so I really don't.
I think that I will put it in a general framework. Sorry. I think that what happened in Israel, that we have not right wing. It is not, I mean, actually, when people think about the two-state solution, Shibli, they think about Israel that signed Oslo in '93. This is not existed anymore. There is no such Israel that was, that signed, I said almost Sykes-Picot. Oslo in '93. We have totally different Israel.
All right.
This is not the one that people, Palestinians, Israelis, international community know it before 20 years. And the right wing, and this is relating to your question, it is not the right wing that was in Israel in the 70s, that came to power in the 70s with Begin, etc. This was committed to democratic values and liberalism, etc. We have a new right in Israel. It is very similar to the new right in Europe. Hatred and discriminatory policies and racism is part of the agenda of the right wing in Israel. So why is he? I mean, he might believe in this, but he's using it because this is the way to say, these are the enemy, and you should consider to go out and vote against them. Vote for me. I'm going to take care of them. This is what is Netanyahu is doing. What he did in the Congress, saying that we are under attack. Iran, whenever have a nuclear weapon, they will throw it toward Israel in the same moment. This is crazy. But he's using this because he spoke not only with the Congress, not with the international community. He spoke with his fellows and with his voters in Israel. This is the right-wing program in France, in Germany, in Austria, and in Israel. This is the situation. So he's using this to tell you that I'm not afraid. I think that Israel became more and more to the right wing. There is a new generation of anti-democratic, anti-liberal, and it is a challenge that we have to face. But the Arab community, this is the topic that I was asked to lecture about, is more strong than the 50s and the 60s. We have more strength, more political will. I think that in a little change in the Israeli left and center, we might lead to a new and different situation in Israel, and then we will lead to a different situation in the relationship between Israel and the rest of the Palestinians and maybe the rest of the Arab world. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the panel. And thank you all for coming.